Hmm? Ah! Oh.
Dude, if the earthquake hits, I am so wearing this stuff.
People are going to be wearing the craziest stuff anyway,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Exactly. It's not a fashion show. It's survival, people.
Yeah.
The zombie apocalypse comes. You have to be prepared.
Podcast Junkies, episode 106, season 2. This week we had a conversation with Karen Koppett, host of the Walking Dead cast with Jason Kabasi. Does that name ring a bell? Of course it does, regular listeners. He was on episode 56. And he and I are working together on the Podcastica network. More on that in a bit. But if you're new to the show, you're probably wondering what we're going to be talking about today and what this is all about. It's Podcast Junkies, aka the podcaster's voice, conversations with amazing, fantastic, engaging, unbelievable, inspiring podcast hosts. Occasionally it's someone outside of the podcasting host space, but in the podcasting community that I think will add value. And I have conversations with those folks as well. Did you catch last week's conversation with Ellery Wells? Ellery, that's a mouthful. Ellery Wells. He's got a really good story about having come out of corporate life, how he changed that around, how he's worked with Toastmasters to really inspire people who are looking to take that same path that he took and really show them what's the proper path to engage in this entrepreneurial game, if you will. So check that out, episode 105 with Ellery Wells. I think you'll enjoy it. So Karen was scheduled to come on this show a long time ago, and we just haven't been able to make it work. She and Jason have been doing the Walking Dead cast for, I think it's going on 7 years. It's a great story, and she's really reserved, and I think you don't hear a lot about her because she's not all over the place giving interviews. But I think she was the last member of the Podcastica network that I have not spoken to, and I'm really happy I did because we dove in a little bit about fun things like her zombie preparedness kit, the recent Free Flow episode they did with Jason, this idea of how Walking Dead, the whole family has been created as a result of people that listen to the show, that they meet at the Walker Stalker cons. I think I got that right. And the people that call in and engage, and the people that leave messages in the Facebook group. It's just a whole Walking Dead family, and it was really surprising for her. So we talk about that, and a bunch of other things with regards to her current job, and I think you'll really find it interesting. I hope you get something out of it and engage with us afterwards in the comments. So stay tuned to the end, and we'll talk about our newest sponsor, PodFunnel. I'll also share the retention hashtag, which is how regular listeners can show us their Podcast Junkies fan badge, which means I just engaged all the way to the end of the episode, which is always fun to see those pop up on Twitter every now and then. So get your best zombie growl out and put your hands together for Karen. I'll talk to you soon.
We've done about 230, maybe more Walking Dead casts. So,
but how many times has the focus been on you?
Well, I mean, it's me and Jason. So the focus isn't. Yeah, that's a good question, my friend. No, I'm totally not.
Okay.
No.
No, obviously you're a podcast pro. That's obvious.
No, I'm definitely in the podcast minor leagues for sure. Hey, you want to see something neat?
I do.
Look at that. See that?
Yeah.
That is my father-in-law. That's a signed shirt from the San Francisco Giants that was given to my father-in-law because he was a sports journalist.
Oh, very cool.
Isn't that cool?
When was that signed? So what era are those players from?
I think Barry Bonds is on
Oh,
that.
okay.
So was that 80s, 90s?
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah.
Is that pre-steroids, Barry, or is the
is there a pre-steroids, Barry?
Is the signature like unusually large and like aggressive, or? I'm Barry Bonds.
You're not.
Yeah.
And here, this is also who keeps me company on many of my podcasts. See her right there? Do you see her?
She. What's her name?
She, Posey.
Posey. Those eyes are like almost fake. Like she has,
I know.
like she. So in case any of this makes it in there for the listener, it's a beautiful. What kind of breed of cat is that?
She's Burmese.
Burmese.
And she, look at Posey. There she is. Yeah, and she's got crazy big eyes. They take up a lot. Yeah, I know.
She's got Michael Jackson Thriller eyes.
Yeah, she kind of does.
That's like the contact lens he had in there.
Yeah, exactly. Well done, Posey. So sorry. I hope she doesn't bug us during the podcast.
No.
Are we recording?
Yeah, we're always recording.
Right on. That's great. Yeah. All right. Good.
So if there's anything you don't want to say or admit, no, seriously. I mean,
too late.
You know how podcasts work. If it's good, we keep it in. If it's not, we'll edit it out later. So
yeah.
I just started drinking LaCroix. I'm gonna mess that up, but LaCroix. LaCroix.
I call them LaCroix. I call them LaCroix, and and we are addicted to these. It's kind of sad.
They go fast. We just bought we couldn't figure out here whether we wanted grapefruit or lemon, so we bought the 12-pack, a 12-pack of each.
Now remember, it's not grapefruit, my friend. It's pamplemousse. Even though the company is like based out of like Wisconsin or something.
Oh, really?
They call it pamplemousse. Yeah, it doesn't say grapefruit. It says pamplemousse. Yeah.
But is it originally from France?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, come on now. That's like, this is like some false advertising thing going on now.
I completely agree. But man, these things are addictive.
And it's not too overpowering, because I thought the grapefruit would be like so in your face, kind of like the fizzy. Not the fizzy. What's the other one that's the fruit flavored sparkling water?
Oh, there's so many.
Yeah.
There's
the tall, slender one. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember the name of it.
Anyway, yeah, those are really grapefruity. But this one was like a hint of grapefruit.
Yeah, I'm drinking the coconut, and most people think that like coconut tastes like feet, but this one tastes really good.
Okay, can you explain to me what friends you have that think coconut tastes like feet?
Well, sometimes coconut water tastes kind of. Well, I'm sorry if we ever have coconut water as one of our sponsors. I have to delete this. Go back and delete it. Sometimes coconut water can taste kind of funky, but some coconut water is brilliant. But this is coconut flavored sparkling water, and it's just delightful. It is like being in Hawaii.
Have you been to Hawaii? Have you been to Hawaii?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I love it because we're in California, so it's a hop, skip, and a jump.
We went to Kauai for New Year's Eve. Not last year, the one before. Did
you love it?
It's amazing. Oh, I was sick actually. So on the way there, I had like food. We went to New Orleans first for Christmas because my brother's there, and so New Orleans, you just stuff your face, man. You just literally like eat everything, and you just Popeye's chicken. Sure, why not?
Sure.
Like jambalaya, it was crazy.
You gotta try it.
And then I got sick. I got like food poisoning or something. So on the plane there, I'm like I had a row that had no passengers, and I was just laid out across from the bathroom, and thank God for that. But I was just like, the first 2 days was like miserable. We actually toasted on New Year's Eve dinner, and I didn't eat. I had like a soup, and I couldn't even drink my champagne.
Happy freaking New Year!
And I was like, no. So
I hope it doesn't put you off of eating in New Orleans, though. No,
I think you just have to. Well, now I'm vegetarian.
So, is that new for you?
That is new. It's I've tried a couple times, but I think this is good for good now.
Interesting. I've been a vegetarian since I was 21.
Wow.
I came back from my junior year abroad in Copenhagen, and I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who was living at the time and was alive at the time, but she was from and lived in Austria, and so I ate a lot of meat. And I came back from Europe, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try being a vegetarian for a year, see how it goes. And I tried it, and it stuck. It was weird. It was like it just stuck.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I've been a vegetarian. It's kind of crazy.
So a lot of the challenges, I think that, I mean, I have friends that are vegetarians, and I know, I definitely don't want to go the just eat bread, just eat pasta, just eat pizza, like, because then eventually it's just like you have these unhealthy vegetarians,
right?
A bunch of, because you can eat really shitty food and be
yeah,
vegetarian.
You can. Yeah, you can. Exactly. You can eat shitty food with any diet out there. Basically, a meat eater, omnivore, pescatarian. You can still eat crappy food. You have to be careful no matter what, but especially when you're a vegetarian, because oftentimes you go out to eat and there's so few options. And hey, pasta Alfredo. That's your option at some restaurants.
That's your go-to, right?
Your go-to, yeah. But yeah, I've managed to make it stick. So how's it going so far? You feel okay?
Yeah, we feel good. And my wife kind of jumped on the bandwagon a couple of weeks later because it just made sense, and first makes shopping easier, and you don't have to worry about like like she's done it for a couple of weeks, and she's like, body types are different, and she has to actually plan like her meals because she takes it to work and I work from home, so it's easier because I can just kind of make something here. But she has to start adding. Decided to start adding proteins back in. So just fish and chicken for now, but the majority is veggies. But it's a matter of like what you bring into the house and where you go. Don't go to like a churrascaria if you're trying to be vegetarian. Yeah. It's like probably not going to work.
Yeah, I had my biggest challenges in Spain. Actually, it was really hard being in Spain, and they look at me like I'm nuts. Like, really, vegetarian? I mean, it was a couple years ago, so maybe now it's a little bit better, but it was very challenging. And I missed it, actually. I missed eating meat when I was there because, there's some countries where they do it right. And Spain's one of them.
Spain is definitely one. We went probably about 3-4 years ago, and it was pure like jamón serrano, like like they had the montaditos, which is like the little like bruschetta, but with like a bunch of different stuff on it. And
yes, please.
And then we went to Italy as well, and Italy was just, they had like these tapas type things and mini paninis they were making, and it was just like so crazy.
Yeah. It's hard, man. Especially if you're like me and you don't eat fish. In Venice, it's all like the chiquettes that have all kinds of seafood. Yum. And in Spain, we went to San Sebastian, which is on the coast there, and seafood's their thing. And it was rough.
So what do you think has kept you so like stuck on the path all these years?
It's really funny. My mom says that I was born a vegetarian. She says now she knows I was born a vegetarian because she said that when I was little, and I kind of remember doing this, she said like even at Thanksgiving, I would name the turkeys.
Oh.
And I used to I've always been a little bit weirded out by meat, and I'm a giant animal lover.
Yeah.
And so I always had a hard time resolving loving animals. I wanted to be a vet for a long, long time, and loving animals and then eating animals. It was always hard for me to get, marry those two things together. So I finally decided, I'm going to stop trying to justify it in my head. And I'm just going to go ahead and become a vegetarian. Yeah. So just super easy. And sometimes I think habits get stuck. And this is just, unless I made a really concerted effort at this point, the habit just has, just stuck. It's who I am now.
Yeah, it becomes a way of life, right? Like everything you do, you don't have to make the decision anymore. You've already made the decision, so it's kind of easier. Like you're not going to get influenced by friends, and it's like, what are you doing? Like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. My husband knew what he was marrying when he's not a vegetarian.
He's not. Oh, that's challenging.
It's okay. Actually, I'm one of these vegetarians that doesn't mind like making meat and cooking meat and
Barbecues.
yeah, he loves barbecuing too. We have a lot of like barbecue people in our neighborhood, and so he gets it. It's
So,
okay.
sounds like you've done a lot of traveling.
Yeah, that's yeah, super. I mean, and that's another thing, once you start and you realize how big the world is and how interesting the world is and how many wonderful people are out there, you just can't stop. So we're planning trips coming up.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
excited.
What's coming up next?
Well, a couple short ones. So we've got Lake Tahoe, which is beautiful in California. We've got going to LA with Jason, actually, from the Walking Dead cast, my co-host.
Shout out to Jason.
Shout out to Jason. Hi, Jason. I don't know if he's going to listen to this, but we're going to go down. We're going to go down there and we're going to listen to Michael Giacchino. He's doing this concert down there, which should be wonderful. I can't wait for that. It's in September. And we're also that same day going to Universal Studios to see the Walking Dead exhibit that they just opened up.
Really? When did that open up?
Just opened up a couple months ago. And so we're going to check it out. We'll be reporting back on the podcast.
Oh, that's great. Well, give me a shout out when you guys are down here. So.
Heck yeah. Oh, see, are you in LA?
I'm in LA. Yeah.
I did not realize that you're based in LA. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What part of LA?
It's called Silver Lake.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course.
It's otherwise for those people not familiar with Los Angeles and you're familiar with Williamsburg in Brooklyn, New York, they call Silver Lake the Williamsburg of LA.
Yeah, it's a cool neighborhood actually.
Yeah. My wife Googled most walkable neighborhood in Los Angeles before we moved here from New York like two plus years ago, and that came up, that neighborhood.
That's fantastic. That's a really good neighborhood. My cousin lives in Pasadena. That's also a wonderful walkable area too.
Yeah, and I think we lived in the city for a long time, and so we like the idea of being able to walk to the bar, walk to the restaurant, and then come back and then have a couple of drinks. You don't have to get in the car, walk home. Like it's amazing.
I don't know why anyone does it any other way. My husband and I are just like that too. And we're about 2 or 3 blocks away from great bars and great restaurants. And that's the whole thing. We're like, oh, let's just walk there. It's so much easier. Yeah, it's great.
So you mentioned you were in, you went to see your grandma in Austria?
Yeah.
Is your family from there?
Part of the family is from Austria, from Linz, Austria. Yeah. Okay. And part of the family is from Russia. And, they all came to the East Coast, and my parents met on the East Coast and moved out to California. So I'm one of these kids that have like all kinds of relatives on the East Coast, and there's just nobody out here in California except my cousin who's in LA. Yeah, it's kind of lonely.
Where on the East Coast?
We have my cousin Tom. I think I can let this cat out of the bag. My cousin Tom is kind of a badass. He is the Cultural Affairs Commissioner of New York City.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. He's with the de Blasio administration, got appointed. So he's a badass. And so, hi, Tom.
So job titles? What does the Cultural Affairs
Commissioner do? Yeah. So he handles the arts budget for New York City, which is great. Yeah. So he sets, budgets for museums and all the cultural things that go on in New York City.
One of the cultural capitals of the world.
Exactly. And this is kind of funny. We went with him to a Mets game in July, which was awesome. So we saw the Mets in July, and the Mets were doing great. And then afterwards, he said to me and David, "Hey, do you guys want to go to the Queens Museum next door?" We were there with the Queens Museum exec too, and she said, "Yeah, I've got a key." So
what's in the Queens Museum?
Like 10:00 at night. It's a fabulous museum. They have there, and this is the thing that we really wanted to see. They have a model. It's from the 1964 World's Fair. It's a scale model of New York City and all the 5 boroughs. And it used to be, it was a ride in the World's Fair. They had these little, these little gondolas that would sort of take you, suspended from the ceiling, that would take you around this giant, it's huge, this huge model of New York City. And it's so cool looking. So there's a walkway now, an elevated walkway all around this model, and you can check it out. So it was like 10 o'clock at night. The guard was like, "Oh, hey," and they flipped on the lights for us, and we got to see this model. And the thing that blew our minds, or at least it blew my mind more than anything else, they had a scale model of the Queen's Museum. So it's this little itty bitty, I mean, they look like Monopoly pieces, this little itty bitty Queen's Museum. And apparently inside the Queen's Museum, you can't even see it with the naked eye, you need a microscope, is a tiny, tiny little model that you're looking at. So it's like a world within a world that's right there on the model. It's so badass and so cool. So that was great. So we got to see that.
Very cool. So, it sounds like he's got carte blanche to see some of the coolest shit in New York City, right?
It's pretty awesome. Yeah. He's I think he's the guy who's behind also the New York City ID. Have you heard about this?
Yeah. Just saw, I was there for a couple of weeks last week, and I saw the commercial for it, and I was like, I don't know what you would have a use for that for, or if it's just like people thinking about population control or something, I'm sure. But I'm like, where would you use that you would need something like that?
A lot of people who live in New York City aren't, naturalized citizens and don't have any identification. You need identification in that town. And so you can apply for your New York City identification. All you need to do, I think all it is proof of address. And you get this really cool card, and it's good also for almost all of the museums and exhibits for like a year of free admission.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you get it? It doesn't cost anything at all. And something like, at least last month, 800,000 people had applied for and gotten their New York City identification. Isn't that cool?
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think when they tie it into like a benefit, like getting access to a year's at the museum or something like that, of course, that's going to be incentive to get people to sign up. That's awesome.
Isn't that great? Yeah, so that's what he does. So yeah, he's badass. Tom.
Did you grow up with him? Did you guys did you hang out when you were little, or?
No, unfortunately, I mean, I knew him and I'd see him occasionally, but I'm a West Coast girl, and that's like the East Coast family is there in Pittsburgh. We have family in Pittsburgh, Maryland, and New York. So and Massachusetts.
So then, after explaining all the cool things that cousin Tom does, after you go down the rest of the family tree, everyone's gonna be like, "Well, they're not as cool as Tom," but
they're all great in their own way. But Tom has an especially awesome job right now. It's just great.
Did you get to spend any time in New York for an extended period of time?
Yeah, we did. We were in New York City, and then we went upstate, and we're in Lake George.
Oh yeah, Lake George. I used to go there when I was little.
It's beautiful.
It's really nice.
Oh, it was so fantastic. We had such a good time there. Oh my God. It's wonderful. And we played miniature golf with our family at one of the declared by the Travel Channel, one of the top 10 miniature golf courses in the world.
Well, I think there's only one in Lake George, isn't there?
No, there's like you can't shake a stick without hitting a
windmill
golf course. Yeah, and by the way, ice cream shop. So old ice cream shop is everywhere, and
saltwater taffy too, maybe.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's so great. Steven and I love that. The Americana stuff just is like, we love it. The cheesier, the better.
Yeah, there's a show that just. Is it a Travel Channel show that just does Americana stuff? Yeah.
I'm sure there is, and if there isn't, there should be, and I'll host it. Fine hosting it.
Have you driven across the country?
No, took the train with my dad when I was a freshman in college in Massachusetts. We took the train back across the country, but that's a tease because you can't get off a train whenever you want to. So,
how was college in Massachusetts?
It was great. I was in Amherst, and it was wonderful. I was this dumb California kid. The heaviest shoes that I brought were Keds.
Oh my God.
I was like, hey, I didn't even have like a proper jacket. And I quickly learned that winters in Massachusetts are not like winters in California.
Yeah.
Lesson number 1.
So that was your first winter?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. And got there, and pretty much shortly thereafter, Hurricane Gloria hit.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I can't remember. Maybe that was my sophomore year, but yeah. And I was like, hurricane? What? We have earthquakes.
Hurricanes and I have yet to experience an earthquake here.
What?
What's going on? I think I want my money back. Like, what? I was like, California earthquakes. Like, it's been 2+ years. Nothing.
Brother,
I'm gonna knock
don't
on wood because
say
I'm probably
that.
jinxing myself here.
No.
We'll get one as we speak. First podcast Junkies earthquake.
Oh, that would be so great. I would love to actually see your face. It'd be neat to have it recorded so we could get your expression.
That's funny.
Because it's such a primal feeling when an earthquake, when the whole world starts shaking.
Yeah.
It's a strange primal feeling, and it triggers something like your animal instincts to it's like nothing else, and it is freaky and unpleasant, and I hope you will never experience an earthquake, my friend.
Is so how many been through?
Well, the big one that I was a student at UC Santa Cruz, finishing up my degree. I was in class, and the big Loma Prieta earthquake hit in 1989. Is it 1989? Yeah, 1989.
Was that the one with the World Series and the power went out?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
David was at the World Series, in fact.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Giants versus the A's, the Battle of the Bay. And yeah, you're right. The Bay Bridge collapsed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not a happy time for the Bay Area. Everything and in Santa Cruz, where it was sort of close to where it was located, the epicenter. It was crazy. I walked home through downtown Santa Cruz, which was devastated, and it felt like a war zone. All these alarms were going off, and I basically ran the rest of the way home to my housemate because I thought our house might have been leveled. Chimneys had collapsed all over. So there was brick all on the streets, and people were freaking out. I got back home to my housemate, Emily, who's still one of my best friends in the world, and I was like, Emily! And our house was trashed, and we did the exact wrong thing. We partied with our neighbors. We drank like
the end of the world or something.
Martinis to calm our nerves, and barbecued that night. It was actually really, really fun.
What do they tell you? Why you said you did what you weren't supposed to do? What do they tell you to do?
Well, you're probably not supposed to, drink vodka and eat everything in sight as comfort food, but that is exactly what we did.
You're like, it'll be open on Monday. Everything will be back to normal.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I hope that does not happen. We just did a podcast. I have to tell you, on the Walking Dead cast, we just did a podcast where we interviewed a guy who was with this company called First My Family, and they do emergency kits.
Yeah.
And he does actually stuff with AMC, and he does branding with like the Walking Dead, which is pretty cool. And he was talking about, hope you have your emergency kits in place. And ever since then, I've been like, okay, let me think about my emergency kit, make sure it's all taken care of.
You were talking about your garbage cans.
Yeah. Oh, you listened to it. I'm sorry. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
So for the listener, tell us what your prep kit looks like.
Yeah, I've got it's comprised of equal parts human food and cat food, because have to make sure that the cat's taken care of, and have these trash cans outside that are all nice and sort of out of the way. I feel like nobody's ever going to raid. No thief is ever going to come and like raid a trash can. Yeah. So I can keep anything in there. So I've got all my stuff in there. I don't have anything to barter. He said, have something to barter. And I'm like, what do we have to barter? We have nothing to barter.
What are some of the tips he gave?
He said, well, have something to barter. And I told David, and David's like, well, we have bottles of wine. So I suppose we can bust into the wine collection and like barter that.
Well, you could actually go to Trader Joe's and buy the $2 chuck and just have like a case of that.
Right, exactly. We will gladly swap you a bottle of $2 chuck for a case of Cliff Bars, sir, is what I'll be telling my neighbors.
There's people dying to get wasted during the zombie apocalypse, right?
Yes. they are. And they shouldn't, but they do. So do you have a prep kit?
I do not. We don't even have like the earthquake kit. Like it's just like you're supposed to have like your sneakers and a flashlight like by the bed. And I think
Harry.
this is pretty. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
That's bad, dude.
Do you have what do you have earthquake kit wise?
I have my sneakers by the bed.
Yeah.
I have socks. I have sneakers. I put socks and sneakers by David's side of the bed too.
Really?
And I mean, we are ready. Yeah, I even have like a kit in my car. I have a kit at work.
So what's in the car kit?
The car kit's a change of clothes, which is really fun. We looked through it the other day, and David's like, "You're not actually going to wear that, are you?" And I'm like, "Dude, if the earthquake hits, I am so wearing this stuff."
People are going to be wearing the craziest stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. It's not a fashion show. It's survival, people.
Yeah.
The zombie apocalypse comes. You have to be prepared.
Although everyone on Walking Dead looks like they are in some like distressed, maybe Abercrombie and Fitch commercial or something like that.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I was looking on some website the other day, and they mentioned the fact they called out. We've interviewed Yulin Womble, who's the wardrobe person, and we love her because she has the sweet South African accent, but also she's wonderful. And she got called, not her, but the wardrobe on The Walking Dead got called out because all the women, not all the women, but a lot of women wear really, really long skirts and long maxi dresses. And it seems like every woman is Amish somehow. Like they just dress in these really Amish looking clothes for the zombies all do.
Yeah.
Although
that's right. Yeah.
all the survivors are wearing really, really, really tight clothes. You feel like, okay, at this point, you're losing weight. Clothes have to be a little loose at this point, but everybody on that show has really, really tight stuff going on. But anyway, the zombies are all looking Amish. So,
I never really thought of that. I mean, most people don't pay that much attention to what the zombies are wearing, but I guess there's keen observers of the show who pick up on those things.
Well, Jason and I were both zombies.
Yeah, that's right.
And they dressed me in tights, blood splatter tights, and a long, long skirt.
See, there you go, long skirt again.
Mm-hmm. And a shirt with. Well, I think originally they had me put this crazy looking vest over the shirt. I'm like, I would never wear this. Are you kidding me, people? But Yulin Womble looked at it and she's like, no, we're going to go with something different. So I got to wear something different.
You should have been able to wear something from your earthquake preparedness kit.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have made so much sense, man.
Actually, the shirt that we pulled out that David was like, "You're not going to wear that, are you?" is a shirt that I bought in Israel. That's the San Francisco Giants logo and it says San Francisco Giants in Hebrew. It's really cool, right? And he's like, "Really, that one, Karen?" And I'm like, "That's what's in my kit." In the car, pal.
Oh,
you don't want to know the shirt that I picked out for you, sir.
Yeah, that you won't get to see until it's actually time to wear it.
He'll be grateful.
So, for the listener, like trying to piece together, like, okay, she's vegetarian, she likes to travel, California earthquakes, spent some time in Amherst, and she's a lover of zombies.
Yes, yeah, that flows. What's the problem here? Yeah,
So where's the
tie-in?
The interest, like where did it start? Was it like just a movie, or just something gradual over time?
It started with, it has to start, it all goes back to Jason, doesn't it always? And Jason and I have been friends for a long time. We dated briefly.
Scandalous.
Hey, we revealed that. Cat was out of the bag a long time ago. And we dated, but we stayed friends because although we might have been, I don't know, we probably would have killed each other and we stayed together, but we absolutely love each other. And he's the greatest guy. I just love hanging out with him. He's so fun to talk to.
Oh yeah.
And he loves talking to me, and so we've just stayed really, really good friends. And I love his wife Jenny, and he loves my husband David, and it's all good. So anyway, about 7 years ago, I think he said, and we started we started listening to podcasts. We love podcasts. I still listen to so many. It's crazy. And new ones all the time too. And so he and I watched Lost together, and we got addicted to this Lost podcast. Yeah. And we started talking about podcasts in general. And he said, you know what? We should totally do a podcast. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in. And he said, there's a show coming up on AMC called The Walking Dead, and he knows that I love the zombie genre. We see zombie movies together, and he knows that I'm a huge fan. So he said, "Do you want to, read a couple of these comics and see?" And he started me off on the first however many comics, and so I started reading them. I'm like, "This is great!" And he said, "The show's going to start in a couple months. Let's start a podcast." And he was working at Apple at the time. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it, man. And so he had the technology and the love of The Walking Dead. And we started it off. And however many years later, we're still going strong. I mean, that's really how it started. Just we love to talk to each other. And just like, now talking to you, Harry, it just seems like it's you and me talking, because it is just you and me talking right now. I mean, eventually our conversation is going to be shared with your listeners.
Worldwide.
At least as far as my mom in Santa Clara. I'm sure she'll listen to it. Anyway, so I mean, it's really funny. If you like talking to the person that you're talking to, it seems easy and fun and great. And Jason and I have been going ever since.
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of chemistry, especially when you have a co-host for your podcast. And I think the fact that you've been able to go so long and have the show be so popular, maybe in the beginning you thought, well, people are just fans of the show, so maybe they're listening and they just want to eat up everything Walking Dead. But I think based on the feedback you get, you guys, through the Facebook comments, through the emails, through the phone calls, the recordings the fans make, I mean, they love you guys.
It's really nice. And we love them. That's the most surprising thing. I never thought anyone would listen to it. I really didn't. I just thought it was me and Jason talking into a void. I never thought we'd get any listeners at all. And the fact that we got people who like to interact with us and like to, it's everything. It's the reason why we're still doing this, because it takes some time and effort to create a podcast, especially time and effort on Jason's part. For me, it's a lot of yakety yak, and then he does the editing and all that. But the payoff is when listeners write in and say, "You helped, get me through. My kid had colic, and I listened." I was up many nights with my colicky baby, and I would listen to your podcast as I was rocking my colicky baby, that kind of thing. And what a privilege, and what a cool thing to be part of somebody's life like that. And then we've been able to meet our listeners too, which is great, and become friends with them. And through Podcastica, we've got a whole little network now, and the community is the reason, really.
Of all the things you just mentioned, was there one thing that really caught you by surprise in terms of the effect it had on you, or the effect that you had on other people?
Yeah, one listener in particular told us that she was having a really hard time. She was detoxing, and she was going through coming off of some heavy stuff, and she said that she just went back and listened to podcasts of ours, and it helped her because she felt like, we were friends with her through this whole process. Wow. And it blew my mind. I had a hard time conveying exactly how much that meant to me, but it meant a lot to me. When a long time ago, it must be about 9 years ago, I went to France for a couple of months, and I got kind of homesick, and I took podcast with me because the connection in this little village I was staying in was terrible. So I saved up a bunch of podcasts on my old school iPod at the time. And I had hours and hours and hours, and I would sort of squirrel them away. And every time I go out running, I'd listen to a new Fresh Air with Terry Gross. Yeah. And it felt like it felt like I had friends, and it helped get me through the loneliness of being in another country. And so I totally get that. I totally get how people develop friendships with their podcasts. I love podcasts. I'm hooked. So, I mean, they're such a big part of my life. So I get it when people say that we're part of their life too. I'm like, oh yeah, I totally get that.
Then you're on the right show, Podcast Junkies.
I'm on the right show. Do you listen to I mean,
oh yeah, I do. I mean, it's funny because once you have your own show, and I help produce shows for clients too now, so I have less and less time to listen. I mean, I used to devour them completely,
Yes.
and so for some of them, I listen at 2x speed because they're information. They're not. I'm not trying to like learn rocket science. I want to be entertained. And
Yes.
you can get used to the voice over time. And it's like, oh, good. I can blast through this and an hour show in like 30 minutes. Yeah, sure. I'll do that. Especially
Wow.
comedy show, comedy podcasts, music. They're not saying anything that's really like that important. And the technology doesn't change the pitch. It's interesting because it's faster, but it's not high pitch. It's not like Alvin and the Chipmunks. It's faster, but they're just talking faster and they're keeping the same pitch. Like I just did right there. So yes, it's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah, you gotta give it a try.
Oh yeah, I'm totally doing that. Thank you for that handy tip, Harry.
That podcast tip was brought to you by. So it's funny because you were mentioning how you're always in this sponsorship mode now when you're looking at products and you're like, oh, like I got to put some hand cleaner on. Oh, Purell. Wouldn't it be great if Purell was the sponsor of the show?
Gee, Harry, I don't know what you're talking about, LaCroix.
LaCroix, it's so delicious. Every tasty drop that I drink helps my podcast. But it's funny because I'll send them the clip. If you give me the marketing contact, I'll figure out what the timestamp is for this portion. I'll be like, see, podcast work. Well, I listened to Song Exploder with Hrishikesh Hirway, which is I don't know if you ever heard it, but he breaks apart music, popular tracks, and then like by the stem. So like here's the drum, here's the kick, and he talks to the artist who made it. Okay, this is what we were thinking. We made the kick drum or something like this. And he's interviewed you, like he has had U2 on there, Bjork. He's now got all the like great artists on there, and so it's just like I was listening to that podcast, and he had Lagunitas beer as a sponsor, and I was like, I love Lagunitas. by your arms in the air, maybe you love it as well. So.
I do too. Oh,
but what was interesting as a podcast consumer, I was walking home that day, and I was like, I'm gonna go buy a 6-pack of beer, and I walked into the store, and I was like, well, I just heard a Lagunitas commercial, so I'm gonna grab some Lagunitas. And the thing is, they can't measure that. Like they don't know. They'll never know that like that actually happened because you can't prove that, but. I'm like, shit, that worked. It literally like brand. So that's brand awareness, right? So
that's fantastic. You know what, though? I got to tell you, most of our sponsors we have are online, and you go in, you type blah, 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 blah /deadcast for your 10% discount, and that they can track. And it must be working because podcast advertising is now everywhere.
Yeah.
Podcasts are really having a moment,
and people are used to hearing it. It's not strange anymore to hear that in the beginning, and even the way you guys are doing it, you guys do it is really funny because I mean, even like with Harry's razors, and it's like, Jason's like, well, yeah, I was shaving, and then like and then you could be like, yeah, and I was shaving my legs, and and I tried it with another razor, but for some reason Harry's works better. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I got really into detail. My husband, he just is like, really, Karen, really. The other day, I was telling him, I'm not going to talk about my colonoscopy. I'm not going to do it. And he's like, yeah, you are, Karen. You're going to talk about your colonoscopy. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do it. And what did I do that morning? I talked to Jason. I'm like, guess what I did yesterday? I had a colonoscopy.
Now, I want to see you tie that into a sponsor.
Wow. This podcast brought to you by Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente, kp.org.
Yeah, totally. We'll cut that. We'll send that snippet as well. You never know, man. You have to educate the brands, right? Because they have no idea that something, we say it, we're like half joking, but we know that as a listener, like if we're joking around something, and before you know it, you just had a 30-second ad read delivered to you, and
Right.
it's kind of like implanted in your brain, and then
Yep.
just like, oh, that. Because you associate the laughing, the good times with, like,
Uh-huh.
Harry's Razors, for example. It's like, oh, what is this Harry's Razors that they're always talking about? They seem to have a good time when they're using their Harry's Razor.
Exactly. Yeah. Smart.
But are you, because in the beginning, did you guys have sponsors from the start, or?
No, we didn't. We got our sponsor, I think. Yeah, I think our first sponsor didn't come until maybe a year or two into the podcast. And that's all Jason. And it's kind of amazing. He just asks. And oftentimes, yeah, isn't that funny? Oftentimes people don't get that if you just take a moment to ask, all kinds of things open up in the world. And people are so like, oh, that'll never I would never get that. No way. Try. What do you got to lose, man? So that's how we got interviews with cast members. That's how we get sponsors. We just asked. And to be more precise, Jason asks.
Yeah, Jason asks, and then you're just like, oh, that's cool. Are we doing that read now?
Exactly.
So talk about the exposure and the accessibility to the cast members, which has come as a result of a podcast.
It's pretty special. Yeah, that's really, really special. When we first started talking to the cast members, it was a surreal experience. All of a sudden, I'm talking to Glenn from The Walking Dead, and it's just beautiful, lovely, sweet Stephen Yeun, and he's really nice. And I'm talking to him, and he's Glenn, and it's strange, and it's surreal, and wonderful, and fabulous. We've talked to him a couple times now, and the first time I got to meet Stephen Yeun at a Walker Stalker Con, and we interviewed him backstage. We introduced ourselves. Hi, I'm Jason. Hi, I'm Karen. And he said, oh, you're Jason and Karen. I wondered what you look like. And immediately I was like, oh my God, Stephen Yeun imagined what I'd look like. Oh my God. It was so great. So it's wonderful to be able to talk to everybody, to talk to Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick. Yeah. In his British accent. After a while, I just sort of sat there dreamily with hearts in my eyes, and I just wanted to just keep talking, Andrew Lincoln. Just keep that beautiful British little. Just keep going. I don't care what you say. Just read me your grocery list. That's fine.
Read this Harry's Razor copy.
Exactly. So that's kind of fun. We've had almost every cast member give us a zombie sound, which is kind
nice.
Yeah. And the one of the best ones was Robert Kirkman, the creator of the show and the writer of the comic, and his zombie sounds like this. Yeehaw! That's his zombie sound. Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but yeah. Maybe I guess when the zombie apocalypse hits, like, Montana.
Right. You're right. That's cowboy zombie.
Cowboys and zombies.
Yager.
Woo. Yeah.
He's kind of a ass.
So explain the zombie sounds for those listeners who might not know.
Yeah, so we have this whole collection now, and Jason one year stitched them all together. So he has all the sounds on his keyboard too, which is really fun. So for some of the cast members, we can hit a keyboard key, and we'll pop Lauren Cohen's zombie sound or Stephen Yeun's zombie sound, and it's just adorable. And some of them are hilarious, and some of them, and they're all very, very cute. We also have our listeners when they call in, we make them give a zombie sound, which is great. It never fails to make us smile each and every single stinking time. It makes me so happy, and it always makes me just, we love it. We think it's so funny. Sometimes they sound like people are just yawning, which is great. And sometimes it sounds like they're in pain.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Well, I mean, the fact that they're calling it takes their like fandom to another level, and then the fact that they want to record these, it just you and Jason now are actually part of like their lives, and in some way, the way that they see like sometimes the cast members on the show, like, oh my God, it would be so nice to like meet them. The fact that they maybe can't do that, they can kind of live vicariously through you guys now, because you guys in some way, for people who've been listening to the show for 7+ years, are semi-famous.
Try telling that. It's really funny. It's really funny because we know exactly how famous we are, which is not very. But it's funny. I am a water conservation specialist by trade, and that's my degrees are in that. And I go to work, and I work really because we've had this drought in California, so that's my profession. So I feel like I have this weird sort of dual existence. People at work, some of them know because I share everything and I'm blah, 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 blah. But other ones are like, what? A podcast? What? And I'm like, yeah, it's a podcast about The Walking Dead. And they're like, no, you're just a water conservation person. And I have to explain, no, it's a gig I have. Other people at work, it's really fun. Have come to like Walker Stalker Con San Francisco. That was me. Yeah, it was very cool. And sometimes my family bothers to ask me about it, but oftentimes it's this really weird kind of like this stealth persona that I get to play around with and talk to Jason and be part of the community. It's really great. I love it.
It's funny because I can relate to that a bit, because I grew up as a DJing, so I DJed like I don't know, you could probably see them, but I still have the vinyl turntables and the vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I would DJ, and then I lived in the city for a while, so I would DJ like a funk night, and I would just be like DJing vinyl records, and I would do it like on Friday night, Saturday night.
That's awesome.
But at the time I was working, like my 9 to 5 was in a bank. I used to work for Chase,
Yeah.
And I used to work in a branch, and so I would tell people in the bank, I was like, oh, I'm a DJ. They're like, you're a DJ? And then I would tell people that I'm DJing. I'm like, yeah, I work in a bank. You work in a bank?
Right.
So it's funny, like the two worlds colliding. Like, they couldn't picture me as doing the other thing. It was so funny.
Exactly. Do you still DJ?
Yeah, I mean, I actually just here at home. Sometimes I play around with the records and stuff like that. Yeah, I was DJing this past weekend. I was like, just play around and have a couple glasses of wine, and
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh, does LA have a pretty good music scene?
They do. Yeah, we're still into electronic music big time. We go to music festivals. We've been to Coachella a couple times. We actually go to Detroit of all places. It's like the birthplace of like techno music, and so yeah.
I love Detroit.
Detroit's a lot. We've been 9 years straight.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, they must have a great music scene. Also, birthplace, of course, of Motown.
Yeah.
But
the city's in rough shape, though. I mean, I think maybe now it's on the upswing, but it's like dilapidated buildings. It's like almost like a war zone out there. It's crazy.
It is, no doubt. I will not argue with you at all. But the buildings are gorgeous, and I have heard so many great things about like people who are fleeing from New York City, priced out. Artists who are priced out are moving to Detroit. And there's a whole cool scene going on in Detroit, and Detroit will rise again. Mark my words.
Yeah.
It's an amazing place. I love that place.
There was a time, I think, there was probably a small window when like the cars were coming out, and it was their heyday, and it was internationally known as like a major city in the United States. Like Detroit was like maybe, I mean, on par with New York, and depending on the time, but it was just like everyone in the world knew like where Detroit was. Right.
And
now they know for a different reason.
Yeah. Poor Detroit.
Yeah.
Taking it on the chin. You'll rise again, Detroit.
Yeah, Detroit will rise again. So, where else? What were you doing when you went to Detroit?
Oh, friends.
Okay.
One of my good friends, Mark. Hey, Mark, if you listen to this. Yeah, I was just visiting Mark, and he knows I love architecture. So we did a whole architecture tour of Detroit. Went to the Detroit Institute of Art. Awesome.
Yeah.
So great. Yeah, I want to go back. I really, really want to go back. I'd love to see I've been to a lot of the towns in the United, or a lot of the big cities in the United States, but I keep thinking, someday David and I are going to have the freedom from work to be able to travel as much as we want to and really scratch that itch because, man, there's so many cool places in the world. There's so many cool places in our country I'd love to see. And lately I've been jonesing for Yellowstone, for instance. Never been. I always wanted to go. So our national parks.
Yeah.
We have a giant map in our laundry room of the United States national parks, and I want to be able to stick the stupid pins in every single one of our national parks and tick those boxes.
That's a lot. How many are there in total?
There's a lot, my friend. I don't know. They're all over the place, and by golly, I'm going to see them.
But
so
I'm interested in your perspective as a someone in the water conservationist field. Like where else in this country, like are we having that problem? Obviously, it's here in LA that it's a big deal. But is it something that I don't think about a lot when I went to New York, right? It was raining a couple times I was there. So it's not top of mind, but just because something is not top of mind doesn't necessarily mean it's not a problem.
That is exactly right. And that's kind of the problem with climate change in general. And the problem with climate change is that it's kind of slow until it's not, until the drought hits, until there's a Hurricane Sandy, until sea levels rise and until some islands start getting inundated and low-lying areas. And I always try to, I try not to do it too much, but I'm always thinking in the back of my mind that the zombie apocalypse is sort of a parable for climate change and for the slow monster that's kind of creeping up on us of the world is going to have to adapt, and we're going to have to get used to some climate change in the world probably faster than we think. And I happen to be in an industry where that's a thing, and I get it all the time. So I understand that not everybody has my perspective. I'm, water conservation. We've been grappling in the West with a giant drought. Yeah. And I don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen this winter. And it scares the crap out of me. I even say, the Game of Thrones, the winter is coming and the White Walkers, that's all a fantastic parallel to climate change. That's the real threat. While everyone is down in the South kind of, trying to get the Iron Throne, the real threat is coming from the North. And it's coming, and you people, while you're all grappling with all this other stuff, the big threat is coming, and it scares me. And I have a lot of faith in humanity, and I have a lot of faith in technology, and I believe that we will be able to adapt. We'll have to adapt. But I also think that we're going to have to pay a giant price. And that's going to be, there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of growing pains, but I'm essentially an optimistic person. And I really think that we'll be able to make it through somehow, some way. But it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
There's just no other way to say it.
Well, it's interesting the perspective you have, because a lot of times people talk about the topic, but they don't have the context with which to make like those proclamations, right? Because they're just like, oh, I just read an article online, or the latest paper did a story on it, so now those are my talking points. And obviously, talking points are used by both sides, and to allow them to make the point that they need to make for their benefit. But I think you're in a special place. You've got the catbird seat, so to speak, and so you can, when you speak, I would think that your word and your words and your advice tend to carry a bit more weight.
And I I get it all the time. So I feel like, oh, maybe it's just that I'm around it all the time. The drought. And the last 4 years, going on 5 years, have been a sprint at work, not a marathon, a sprint. And that's a long flipping sprint.
What's the sprint for?
The sprint is because my job used to be mellow. Maybe not mellow, but it was busy, but it was not like it's not like since the drought hit. Since the drought hit, my entire world at work changed, and we are running around constantly like headless chickens trying to keep up with it. Yeah, because reservoirs are emptying. We are definitely in crisis mode. We've been in crisis mode at our water district for years, and it's a big deal. Even if Donald Trump says we're not in a drought, we are in fact in a drought.
Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast episode.
It's a whole nother podcast.
I'm wondering, what happens is, because we always say, we're in a drought. When it first happens and it first hits, people react accordingly. But as the years go by, I would imagine people start to get immune to the warnings.
Yes.
And they just get conditioned that this is their way of life. So if that's the way of life, then let me just go back to my normal way of life and not be concerned about conserving in some strange way.
Yeah, they get drought fatigue. But we're hoping that by now the habits have stuck. Yeah. And so that the new normal is you're going to be more careful about maybe instead of planting grass, you're planting natives. Yeah. Maybe instead of having the really high flush toilets, you go to the low flow toilets, or, on washing the full loads of laundry, blah, 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 blah. So maybe that's now the new normal, and the habits have stuck because we've been in it long enough and you've had to hear me blah, blah, blah about it all. So, and the nice thing is that we back up a lot of our things with rebates. So I've been, part of my job is to give away money.
Oh, cool.
And that's not too shabby, right?
What's the latest rebate offer?
Well, I do these really big rebates for companies that make big equipment changes. Yeah. And we give rebates up to and including $50,000. So that's a big stinking rebate. And I just did a rebate the other day for around $10,000. So that's not too shabby.
So if you're a business owner in California, then
Santa Clara County, but okay. Close.
I'm like the whole state.
My phone starts ringing. Harry.
I'm just trying to keep you busy.
Thanks.
So we'll wrap up here. We've been chatting for about an hour now.
Yeah, nice. It was like just 2 minutes. You're a delight to talk to, Harry.
Oh, thank you. Do you ever think about this is a heavy, like a big term, but like legacy, like in terms of like all the things you've done and what you went to school for versus where you ended up, and now that you're working with water conservation? I always like to kind of just throw the question out there in terms of like if you saw your life in like an arc, what you think you'd have left to do.
Oh, that's a fabulous question. I'm not one of these people who dwells on things like I was thinking today, I was reading a New York Times article about the guy who's the creator of Bojack Horseman. And he was talking about how he's never satisfied. And he's, always trying to get the gold ring. And then once he has the gold ring, he doesn't want the gold ring. Yeah. And I was thinking, wow, that's just not me. I didn't think I would have anything like what I have. I didn't think I would have a job that I loved. I could never dream that I'd have. I thought, I'm just going to be some drone in an office. I never thought I'd have a job that I adore. I never thought I'd have a husband that is as fabulous as David. Aww. And I never thought that I'd live in a house that I love in an area that I mean, honestly, I had such low expectations of my own existence.
That's one way to do it, right?
Yeah, but the bar was set really low. That what I've got is exceeded what I wanted because I didn't want much. So I'm super content. So in terms of legacy and what I still have left to do, I just hope that I can make, every moment count and love fiercely and live honestly and, and spread joy when I can.
Nice.
I think it's as best as you can do, man.
Love fiercely and live honestly. I like that a lot.
Good. Top of my head, man.
that was pretty good top of your head stuff there. What's the one most misunderstood thing about you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think people think that, I don't know, actually. What's misunderstood about me? Maybe people think that I'm always walking around all sunshine and lollipops. And, oftentimes, it just, it's, I'm working hard and sometimes I'm just, laying on the couch, eating corn chips with the cat. I mean, I guess I'm sort of happy when I do that too. I don't know. I'm so much of me is, I don't leave a lot to the imagination. I really don't. I reveal so much about me. So there's not a lot to misunderstand. Pretty much what you see is what you get.
I think for people that, especially since we're talking about podcasts and the fact that the medium is so intimate, I think people get a picture of you from your voice and from your just enthusiasm, and you're just like joie de vivre. If that's another French phrase I'm going to screw up after La Croix.
Right, that's good. No, you did it right.
And so, I imagine people think you're one way just because of your just enthusiasm and your just joy of life.
Yeah. But it's pretty true. When they see me being happy when I podcast, it's because I'm happy when I podcast.
Yeah, imagine
because I love it. Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
Oh, that's another fantastic question. Oh, I used to be I've decided after watching a presidential, one of the party conventions. I won't say which one, but I watched them both actually. But I decided after watching somebody at one of the presidential conventions, one of the party conventions, and they said, being optimistic is kind of a choice. And having an optimistic worldview. And I've been pretty pessimistic about the world lately. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, unrest and climate change, blah blah blah. So I've decided I'm actually going to make I'm going to change my mind about that. I'm going to make a concerted effort to be more optimistic, and it's paid off already. Yeah. And I've already decided that, based on the evidence, that things are going to be okay. So
that's an important mindset because we do have control over our reaction to the things that are happening in this world. And a lot of times, if we change our reaction to them, it just helps us to deal with them better. And I think either way, they're going to work themselves out the way they are anyway. It's like when you're cold, like if you're not, unless you're super cold or California cold, which is like 50s, as opposed to having been in Massachusetts, you're like, no, that's cold.
That's cold.
And it's a mindset, right? If someone from Massachusetts come here in 50 degrees, they're like, no, it's not cold. And it's the same
temperature.
Yeah, same temperature.
Right.
But it's two different human beings deciding to experience it in different ways. And I think that's something what you're alluding to.
I like it. I like it, Harry. That's a great note to end on.
Thank you so much for spending Tuesday evening here on
It was so fun. Thank you so much for talking with me. I loved it. It was great.
And so what's the best place for folks to track you down online?
Come to our The Walking Dead cast. You can find us on all the usual places, but that's usually where I'm hanging out at. Or podcastica.com.
Yeah, podcastica.com or The Walking Dead cast on Facebook. And you got a pretty active fans on Facebook as well. So
yeah, I love it. Yeah, chime in, people. If you've heard this, let me know, and I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks again, and have a great night.
Thanks, you too, Harry. Take care.
I'm back. And I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Karen. It's so interesting to have conversations with people who have had this long running podcast and have built up this incredible fan base and have really talk about how this idea of family builds up over time. I mean, 7 seasons of Walking Dead. That last episode of the last season was really, I mean, I was squirming. And I realized that I had built up a connection to the characters in the show after watching 6 seasons of it. And that's what happens with podcasters as well. You start to listen to them enough and you just develop a connection to them. And they really start to feel like your podcasting family. So it's always nice. I imagine these live events, they get to connect with them and see them in person and take amazing pictures. So what do you want to talk about? How about the fact that we're a member of Podcastica? And since we're having a conversation with Karen, whose co-host is Jason, who started Podcastica, I think that's an amazing segue. Intro and outro music provided by Cedar and Soil, aka George Aviana, cedarsoil.com. This episode is brought to you by PodFunnel. I was really interested in how many one-man shops there are out there when it comes to podcasting. You meet them all at Podcast Movement, and everyone is just struggling with ways on which they can promote their show and get it out there. Almost everyone has a regular job in addition to podcasting. So what I tried to do is make people's lives easier. Hopefully it's a tool that'll help you get to the dinner table a bit sooner than you do now, because you're struggling to get an episode out and get it promoted and get it pushed out to a couple of different channels, like maybe like SoundCloud and YouTube, and get it scheduled out on Twitter. And those are the things that PodFunnel can help with. And I'm taking in beta testers right now, aka PodFunnel Pioneers. It'll be one price for the lifetime of the tool. So head on over to podfunnel.com. You can log in there. No special link as of right now because it's just a one-off conversation with me personally. And we'll see if it's a fit for you. And if you're interested, I'd love to have you on board. So this week's retention hashtag is going to be Walking Karen. So in honor of Walking Dead, hashtag Walking Karen. And you can connect with her. Her Twitter is actually Jason and Karen. They've created a Twitter handle just for the show at Jason and Karen. And is spelled out, so it's JASONANDCAREN. Tag her /them and tag me, podcast_junkies. Let us know you made it this far. It's always fun to have those conversations. And if you caught last week's episode, you'll know that I'm actively looking out for SpeakPipe comments because I'm going to start to play them in the show. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a nice way for me to start to engage with people in the show. That's the alarm on my iPhone telling me it's time to call my parents. Do you know that I actually put an alarm in there once a week? I don't know if that's TMI, but I think if I don't schedule it, I forget it. So that was an interesting digression. But yeah, call your parents. That's probably something you should do too. So SpeakPipe and then call your parents. Call your mom, call your dad. They probably miss you. And if you spoke to your parents before you went to SpeakPipe, then you can tell me about how you spoke to your parents, and that ended up being a great conversation. So you never know how these episodes will end. Always a fun journey for me and hopefully for you. Stay tuned next week. We have a conversation with Mr. Jonathan Oakes, another result of my visit to Podcast Movement in Chicago, host of Trivial Warfare. You're not going to believe where that conversation went. I'm telling you. Don't be fooled by the type of podcast that he's a host of. We went somewhere completely different. Exciting. Stay tuned for that and have a fantastic week as always.